Thank you for attending today's panel discussion, Diversity and Development in Construction. My name is Amber Coriath, Chair of Women's Leadership Network and NAIP President-elect. Before we get started, I would like to thank our gavel sponsors. At the gold level, Cushman & Wakefield Cresco Real Estate, Dollar Bank, PNC Real Estate, RSM US LLP. Silver level, Cohen & Company, First American Title Insurance Company, National Commercial Services, First Federal Lakewood, Marsh & McLennan Agency, Retzel, Walter Haverfield LLP, Welty Development, and at the bronze level, Akron Cleveland Association of Realtors, ATC Group Services LLC, Bellwether Enterprise Real Estate Capital LLC, Duffy & Duffy Cost Segregation Services, First Financial Bank, Labella Associates, M. Panzica Development, Marcus & Millichap, Onyx Creative, Pride One Construction, Rycon Construction, Socorro Law LLC, Omni Title, and Thompson Hine. Without our sponsors, NAIP would not be able to continue having great program and providing networking opportunities. We also provide access to behind the scenes tours and advocating for our industry at the local, state, and national level. Today's panel discussion is hosted by the Women's Leadership Network. We started WLN in 2020 and look to continue to evolve our programming to focus on the successes of women and other minority groups in commercial real estate, while also advocating for equity and inclusion. One last housekeeping item. If you have a question you would like to ask the panel, please post your questions in the Q&A box or directly in the chat. With that being said, I don't want to take any more time from today's discussion. I would like to turn it over to our moderator of today's panel, Chris Shefton, Director of Real Estate Development at Famicos Foundation. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. As Amber mentioned, my name is Chris Shefton. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development for Famicos. I've been with Famicos Foundation for the last 7 years, working in various capacities, all in real estate. I'm also a graduate of Cleveland State University in their Masters of Urban Planning, Development, and Design program, as well as holding degrees from Xavier University and Baldwin Wallace. But I'm the least important person in our conversation today. I really want us to spend our morning really getting to know our panelists and the wonderful things that they've been accomplishing in our great city of Cleveland. So with that, if we could start with Ariane, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, good morning. My name is Ariane Kirkpatrick. I'm the owner of the AKA team. We are a construction company here in Cleveland, Ohio. We have been in business for a little bit over 10 years. And I actually have been in construction for almost 30 years. I'm a graduate of Cleveland State University, also Cuyahoga Community College and Warrensville Heights. And I say all that because all three of those educational arenas are important and integral to who I am today. So.
Hi, I'm Richard Singleton. I'm part of WRJ Developers, co-founder. I'm a developer in Cleveland, new developer for the last 2 years we formed, and we've had 3 projects approved through the city. So being a Black developer in Cleveland is new to me and our team, but we're making strides to continue. I'm from Cleveland, born and raised, graduated from Warrensville Heights High School, went to Denison University, and came back to Cleveland and started a development company with two of my best friends. And I also have RAS Services, which is, I started myself rehabbing homes in the inner circle suburbs such as Warrensville, Garfield, Bedford areas. But now we're moving to bigger things and doing development. One of our development projects is with Famicos. So thanks for having me here today.
And Marquette?
How you doing? My name is Marquette Williams. Technically, I'm a filmmaker, so I'm an artist. I am pretending to be a land developer right now on a project we're doing called Cinema City. Technically, I will be the managing partner of the Cinema City project. Cinema City is a mixed-use development that is anchored by a 200,000 square foot soundstage. And that's really it. I make things.
Awesome. Well, welcome to all three of you. As I mentioned, I'm really excited to get our conversation going today. I know what the title of our conversation is today, but really, I just want to talk about development in Cleveland, right? I really want to talk about what we think are the exciting, new, and wonderful things that are getting ready to pop in our city. And so, Marquette, if we could start with you, can you
Okay.
dive more into your project and talk more in detail about what you're trying to bring to the city?
Yeah. So, I make films, I make documentaries, I do commercial work, I do, my day-to-day is just an artist. I've lived in LA for 25 years. About 4 years ago, maybe 5, my mother, who's a teacher, began to ask me what I was doing to help our people, like flat out. She was like, you come here, you shoot stuff, you bring these people from LA. And that kind of turned into really me looking at workforce development. So it started with this concept of training the lower 2/3 of the academic spectrum and training blue collar people to work on film sets. Mainly the positions that you do not have to go to college for, what we call below the line labor. So I kind of came into the space really thinking about training and maybe opening, a training facility. I quickly learned that there wasn't a lot of money in that, and the ability to engage financial partners was slightly different. So we began to look at Cleveland from 2 aspects. Number one being a filmmaker. So you have a 30% tax credit in the state, and how was that being leveraged? So we realized that a lot of it wasn't per se being leveraged for television, which television in terms of employment is 9 months out the year. Then we looked at infrastructure, right? They find gold, you should bring picks and shovels type of thing. So we realized that there wasn't a lot of infrastructure in terms of equipment rentals, and most importantly, labor. The state of Ohio probably has 350 IATSE union members, and those are people that work in the film industry, right? The average age of those members, I believe, is like 52. And it kind of crosses with the average age of a construction worker. So then we looked at what we could do, right? And the conversation turned into opening a soundstage. When you hear the word soundstage, most people think of something that's very large. It may sound large in terms of 2,000 to 200,000 square feet. It may sound large in terms of price tag, but really it's small. In comparison to most sound stages, we'll only be able to hold 3 to 4 TV shows, but that will allow for the employment of 1,000 plus Clevelanders, right? Big picture for us, it's about the Innovation Center, which is where we train people and get people involved in the film industry. So it's, the way we look at it is pathways. First pathway is you take a training and you can go to college at Tri-C or CSU and learn how to become a filmmaker like myself, which ultimately is an employer. Second part of it is to train people who do not want to go to those paths and find ways to place them in jobs. So the idea of education turned into a land development conversation because of the opportunity zone. So we felt that we would marry the opportunity zone and the ability to park capital gains tax with this kind of vehicle for social impact, right? Which turned into training and things like that. And so that's really where the Cinema City project came from. And then after talking with, developers, particularly Radhika Reddy, who's our financial manager, and getting a better understanding of what I was actually thinking and what it actually meant in terms of land development, then it kind of morphed into different phases, and then it came into kind of a destination site, right? Because when we talk to people in LA, they viewed Cleveland kind of as an island, Ohio as an island, right? And so we knew that it wasn't enough just to offer sound stages. We had to offer social impact. We have we had to offer nightlife, we had to offer housing. So over a period of time, it turns into this kind of utopia where people can come and make content, but also where Clevelanders can get jobs and get training.
And just a quick follow-up is, and where are you planning for Cinema City?
Right now, we have site control over 25 acres off of 79th and St. Clair.
Awesome, awesome. So Arian, if we can move on to you, tell us a little bit about the AKA team and the types of projects that you guys are currently working on.
Well, the AKA team, we're a commercial construction company. We concentrate in construction management, commercial waterproofing, and SPD special projects where we do general trades, general contracting. And we primarily have concentrated in healthcare, education, and some of the sports arenas. We've been on most of the major projects in Cleveland. We're a union company. We started off in a little house on Miles Road with about 3 or 4 employees and then our labor staff. And now we have 35 staff members and we employ about 105 people a year in construction, building and participating in some of the larger projects. I grew up actually on 2245 East 100th Street when Cleveland Clinic was one small building. And it was, it was just a big thing for us. I grew up in an area where there were many Black-owned businesses. And so I knew then that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I looked at Cleveland Clinic and I said, either I'm going to work there one day. Did I think that I could build it? Yes, I did. But I didn't realize that it would be a dream possible for me, especially as a Black woman. So for me to participate and to be involved in millions of dollars of building Cleveland Clinic is just something that I'm very proud of. One of the proudest projects that I could say right now that I'm on, and I did not know Richard was an alumni also, and that's the Warrensville Heights school project. We just finished the elementary project, and we are also the co-construction managers for the Warrensville Heights new middle school and high school, where I am a proud alum. And to be on that project is just, it's enriching, something that I can give back to my community. And I get so many people from Warrensville coming up to me saying, hey, we're proud. They'll see the sign with Infinity, but then they look and they say AKA team. And to be able to have the opportunity to construct a building in your community where you grew up and to give back, there aren't enough words. It's been a barrier getting into the construction industry, especially for me as a woman. We have all these acronyms, MBE, FBE, DBE, SBE, and those aren't the ones that you see the MBA and the PhD after the names, but those are the acronyms that carry us. So while it's been it's been good to have that as far as the certifications, but sometimes what happens a lot of times is people or owners or others do not value you for what you do. They only see me as a Black female. And many times we're asked to get on a project just so we could fulfill a quota, so that we could fulfill a percentage. And that's discouraging because we are a qualified, great, almost $10 million construction company. And we know exactly what we're doing. We know our product. So, while we have all those acronyms, my name's not MBE, my name's not FBE, it's Arian Kirkpatrick, and we are the AKA team, and we build great buildings. We're great construction managers.
That's an awesome point, and that's actually a point that I want to come back to, Ariane. I definitely, as the person that hires the construction teams, what I can tell you for sure is when we work with majority developers, we see exactly what you're talking about in terms of quotas. When we require that individuals hire people from neighborhoods and people of color, we kind of get the runaround, and I want to kind of key in on the point of what that runaround is. But before we jump there, Richard, I would love for you to talk about the wonderful things that you guys are doing at 72nd in St. Clair.
Yeah. So Rich Singleton, WRJ Developers. We were founded, two of my other best friends from Warrensville, we founded our company 2 years ago. So we said, hey, there's a need for housing. We saw, everything going up and things coming down in Cleveland, like 2014, 15, when they started demoing homes. And we came up with a plan to say, hey, let's buy some land and build something in our community, that's affordable, sort of workforce housing, and see how we can do it. We kind of jumped in with both feet, not knowing anything about being a developer, but we've just learned and figured it out. We bought our first piece of land in Huff and took it all the way through the city for schematic and conceptual design. That project is fully approved, but on hold right now. And then we moved over to East 72nd in St. Clair, right by Gordon Park, off of the water. And we just thought it was a perfect location, access to water, access to the waterfront. And it was just a area that wasn't developed yet. And we jumped right into it. We purchased like five lots, got support from the councilman, Anthony Harrison, got support from Famicos, support from the city. So we're going to be building a 64-unit container apartment building right on East 72nd. And then we're going to build infill, and behind East 72nd infill lots, we're going to be building 2 families and triplexes to go into those infields and to make a sustainable community. During that process, we've learned that, it's just not the numbers, it's not your pro forma, it's, makes sense because we don't have any experience. We go to the banks, we go to the other folks, we got to have the experience. So our first project, we know we have to build a team, and being able to build those relationships with Famicos and the councilman, that's what's key in being the developer, is the relationships you build, and getting that first one in the dirt will help us. But we've packaged so many deals now, and we can find land. We're from this area. We know what people want. But our struggle is always, the cost to build right now for everybody. But we're building, this apartment building, this whole community is going to be, we're looking to make it more workforce housing for those folks, the nurses, the maintenance people. We want them to have something nice. We don't want to build something that's going to push, the community that lives there out. And that was our strategy. And what we also did during our being a developer, you learn is that you have to give back and have a social impact part of your project. So we've reached out to Lincoln Electric, OD Plumbing, different companies to say, hey, we're building this in your area where where you have facilities, and they've came in and said, hey, we're gonna, be part of this. We'll donate supplies, but we also want to set up a career center. We also want to do job opportunities that come work for OD, come work for Lincoln Electric. And that's the kind of thing that I'm learning as a developer, is that these companies or these relationships you build are part of the whole story, that everyone wants to see that, I'm just not building something and walking away. I'm building something that's going to leave a legacy and bring workforce housing and job opportunities to these communities that, that are, being pushed out. So yeah, our project is East 72nd and our container. So we moved into container homes or a modular type build, kind of a metal structure, just because we're not a construction company, and we were kind of like, we needed our own niche. And this was something we saw across the country growing. It's a quicker build. It's a modular type build. You can do a lot of things off site and kind of be there, but it still looks and feels, drywall it inside and everything, but it's just the metal structure of the units that we're looking to develop. So yeah, that's our story for now.
And then just a quick follow-up, Richard. So I want this to be true, but I'm probably won't be, but are you guys, obviously you're being impacted by the cost of construction right now, but are you seeing any savings at all because you're using containers as opposed to a traditional stick build?
Yeah, the big thing with the container and the fabrication, we can do a lot of it off-site. So instead of a stick build, lumber's going up, metal's going up in price, everything is. But what we can save is that instead of a 6-month build to build a house, we can be done in 3 months. And when the winter, like right now in the winter, when it's December, January, and you can't be outside and do anything, we can fabricate, we can cut walls in, we can put windows in, we can put doors in, you can reinforce the structure at a secure temperature, location that all this work can be done there. So once Cleveland's ready to do some work, it's not snowing in May or raining, we can go ahead and set the units up, and then you throw your trades in there, and then you knock it out. So that's the cost. That's the time saver is what's key with the modular type build that we're doing.
So a theme that I picked up across all three of your stories is the consistency that seems to be around workforce, but more importantly around social impact, around giving back to the neighborhoods and communities that you come from. And so this question is for all three of you. What are your thoughts in terms of, do you feel as though being Black is the force behind that? Is that just your heart to give? What do you feel is the true impetus behind that want and a need to give back to the community as you're doing these projects?
For me, I'll jump in real quick. I guess for me, it was, you want to give back. I feel it was, part of our mission is to give back, in some way or form. I don't think we wanted to, it's not a money grab for us. I think my partners were all come from humble backgrounds. We didn't come from much. And, my grandmother was a teacher, my aunt's a teacher. We saw our families work hard, and I don't think we could look at ourselves and say we're building something and going to charge $3,000 in rent and then walk away. So I think for us, it was more, if we're going to do this, we wanted to build a legacy and something that would be remembered and not, forgotten, and support Cleveland. I mean, this is where we're from. We want everybody to be successful. We want to be inclusive of everyone. So I think that's where, our mindset was, but we definitely feel obligated to do that, just where we're from and the people we know. And I think our parents would look at us crazy if we didn't.
I would have to agree with Richard. It's just, to me, it's just a natural thing that you do. It's just something where I want to give back. And like you said, obligated. Yeah, I feel obligated, that the care is there, very sincere, because our shoulders are big, and we had shoulders that we stepped on, and we had people that were before us that paved the way for us. So it's very important for us never, ever to forget where we come from, or we have to follow the path, and we have to give others the opportunities to get on that path. Where I'm very intentional about my diversity. We have 21% women working for the AKA team, and we have 72% minorities. That's not typical, and it's something that I'm totally concentrated. I have another business also, and I was looking at that business. And that business right now, as far as my upper management team, is 90% minority. It was unintentional. What happens when you have people and you put people in a position and you give minorities and women opportunities, a lot of times you put people in place that look like you. My workforce is very important. I want to make sure that I give families the opportunity to give employees the opportunity to take care of their families. Tell you something that happened to me once. There was a gentleman that was working, he was a laborer. He had some difficulties with math, and they were trying to kick him off the job. He was my laborer. And so I sent him to class, paid for it. And he was older. He sent me a letter back that made me cry, that I still have hanging in my office. It said, "Thank you for the opportunity for me to feed my family. Thank you for having faith in me." And he gave me this, and it's probably somewhere, it's right over there: faith, believe, and love, and an angel. And I mean, and I cry and I look at it every time. That's why we are in the positions that we are, to give back and to give opportunity. President Barack Obama said, when you hit your wagon to something bigger than yourself, that's when you reach your full potential. That's what it's about. So that's a given. Hit your wagon.
Marquette, I didn't know if you wanted to jump in here.
I'm like way new at land development, so they both have way more experience than me. I would say that it's twofold, like to answer your question specifically. The first part is just I'm a human being. And I think if you're a human being, you really do care for other people. You see the inadequacies that are going on. You see the lack of equity. It's pretty basic, right? Be a poor person, how can you help? I think the part of it within me is I have a platform in terms of my history as a people in civil rights allows me to speak about those inadequacies and put things into action. That's kind of the blessing and burden of all Black people, I believe. I think that women carry the same burden, right? How do we speak for those who don't have a voice? So there's a part of it that goes old school. When our people left the South and came up here with those factory jobs, they sent message and taught their cousins from down south when they came up and they got them jobs. So I think it's traditional, the things that we do. I think that we were raised to do them, and I think that's important. It's kind of what Richard said. That's who we are as a people, right? So I think that is in everything we do in terms of the way we think as a people. On a personal level, I'm just trying to teach what I know. If I knew how to bake cookies, I'd be teaching how to bake cookies, right? I'd be building a big bakery and we'd be making cookies. I know art. I'm trying to find a way to synthesize that art to teach in a way that factories employ, right? So I think that culturally it's my duty to do it, and I'm honored to be able to be in a position to do it. Do you know what I'm saying?
So just as a follow-up to that one, Marquette, so you say that you're not a developer. I would argue that most people don't come out the womb developers. They evolve, right?
Yeah.
Out of need or necessity. Theaster Gates immediately comes to mind as an artist who became a developer because out of necessity. And so I think that that's my next question. Even though I feel like I have the answer already. Why the choice to be a developer? As you say, you're an artist. Ariane had dreams of being an entrepreneur. And Richard seems the most sort of natural to the stream, but why the choice to be a developer?
I think I didn't really know any, right? And so when I came up with the concept, I didn't really know what to do with it. And then I come from the world of why not you, why not me? And so as I began to learn about it, I also saw it's a treacherous game. We'll keep it 100. Like, it's a treacherous game. And when you got intellectual property, when you want to help poor people, when you're trying to get land, I don't know how y'all have dealt with this. I mean, it is really a treacherous game. And so I began to realize that the importance of the job training weighed heavy on my heart. So instead of me selling the idea to different people or moving it, I felt like I had to hold fast just to make sure that my people had access to that training and they didn't have to pay for it, number one. Number two, that they got paid eventually to learn. So it was more mission and purpose driven. I think second, I'm an artist, so I like making things. I'm project-based, purpose project-based. So I understood the mechanics of it from producing content or making content, dealing with large groups of people. You know, it made sense in a weird kind of synthesizing way. The next part was, as an artist, you're around a lot of people with money. And so the huge part of this land development game is being able to have these conversations about money and understanding money, understanding taxes, understanding all these things about money. Because I'm an artist, I can go into a room and just say, hey, Richard, I don't know nothing about this, but I know the containers are great for the environment. I know that they employ tons of welders. I understand that they last longer and are more net zero energy efficient. So as long as I know enough about the game to articulate my vision, which any director does, because that's how we pitch our ideas. It's been a somewhat easy transition in that way. The putting the money together, I mean, when you're talking about $45 million, and man, like that part has been, in one sense, amazing, because the social impact part has allowed us to put together $35 million, right? On the opposite side of it, man, there's so much due diligence, entitlement, land survey. I mean, it is literally, it will destroy you if you don't have the Constitution for it. And so I think if there's anything, as we have these talks about land development, you have to understand emotional, social, and financial constitution, because you're going into something that is purely created for people who are wealthy. It doesn't matter how much you know, it doesn't matter how great you work at it. At the end of the day, I think that when she talked about glass ceilings, we have to understand that those glass ceilings are access to trillions of dollars. And the things that we're trying to do is to get our involved market share wise into those markets that exchange that currency back and forth, right? They don't want anyone who cares about poor people involved in capitalism. Those are like a punt, that's a punt, right? So we're coming at it from the fight of, we're trying to help people, but to help people, you gotta make money. You gotta have that currency, you gotta have that equity in the sense of economics, right? So I chose it because I knew that I had the ability to tell the narrative. I still don't know if I can actually physically build it. You know what I mean? That's application versus theory, man. Wow. But I feel like I understand the game of people, because I come from Kansas, when I come from the hood, you know, so I understand people. And so I at least understand that when I surround myself with the right people, I'm my weakest link at all times. So as long as I'm my weakest link, the project will get done. I'm also really big on crossing racial and economic lines. I got no problem going to the West Side. I got no problem going out to Parma. I don't have a problem with any of that, because in every room is a good person. And so I'm looking for that good person in every room who understands Black means poor. I'm here to help poor people. I am Black. There are tons of poor people that are not Black, that they need jobs. So that's how I view any conversation about the studio. Do you want to help Clevelanders get jobs, and do you want to be a part of the entertainment industry? It's a very simple sell. I hope I
just to piggyback off that, if I could, I fell into this too. I mean, we bought a piece of land and was like, hey, let's build something. And we were like, okay. And they were like, no, you need a geotechnical test, you need a phase test, you need a market survey, and I was like, we just can't build a house here or a couple houses and just submit it to the city. They were like, no. He's like, you got to get buy-in from, city, the councilman, and that's where you learn. Is like, people ask me like, oh, you know this stuff and help me out and mentor me. I was like, I didn't have a mentor. Like we jumped into this and wanted to do it, and we figured it out. And my goal is to, it's not a lot of people that look like us that's doing this. We realized, and I want to be able to help other people that want to do that. But I know a lot of people reach out to me and I'm like, man, I'm still in it. I'm still like in the depths of this, 2 years in, and we've got 3 projects, and people are amazed that we got 3 projects to prove to the city of Cleveland. But it's that relationship. It's building relationships with everybody. I don't care what color, race, anything you are. If you're a good person and people see that you're trying to do something positive, they want to be part of it. And that's what I've always learned, is the relationship building part of this is key. But again, our ceiling is limited because we financially back this ourselves as developers. All these architects you got to pay, all this, market studies, we come out of pocket. And unless you have that, rich uncle or that angel investor to say, hey, here's $1 million, go develop. And people don't realize that's what it takes to be a developer. Is you got to have cash up front, because you don't see that money until, you get that loan and you get it built, and, it's way down the line. So it's not that instant gratification when you can flip a house or do something real quick. It's a long-term play, but it's but once you get one thing done in the dirt, people believe in you, and then it'll start going. But I think for us, we're kind of I mean, I look at our team as the WRJ team is like, we're grassroots. We're starting, we're pulling money from our 401ks. We're taking loans out just to do this. So, and we're in it now. It's like, we believe in what we're doing. We believe in what we're building in Cleveland. And we believe that it's going to open doors for other young kids that want to do this too, that look like us, and some that don't, and, may not have we didn't come from money. So we're building this as we know, and hopefully people can learn from us, but it does take that upfront money, and it's a big boys game to be a developer. It's like, it's a different beast. It wasn't built for us, and we're gonna change that though. We're gonna open doors to make the opportunities for others that look like us to be able to do this, because we need to be building in our communities. Because if you look at the West Side, I mean, Ohio City, Tremont was, back in the day, it was like, it was the hood, honestly. I mean, it was ladies' night and things like that. And now it's like beautiful. And I mean, we're on the East Side, and we're like, you know what? We're not going to push everybody out and gentrify stuff. We want to make it workforce, affordable housing, and make it nice for everybody. We got the waterfront is our biggest thing here in Cleveland Lake, and why can't we enjoy it? And, all communities enjoy it, all people, and not push everyone out, pushing everyone away from the water and away from the lake. So, but yeah, it's definitely a lot of upfront costs for being a developer.
So the reason why I loved your project from the beginning is because you saw something that I thought was a duh, right? Like, duh, the lake is there.
Right.
Let's look at the lake. And there's some other developers who have expressed interest in that area. Some folks own land over there and other things, but nobody's breaking the ground on the project.
Right.
So,
but the funny thing is, I remember going to Gordon Park as a kid on East 72nd, going to play baseball games at Gordon Park, and hanging out there on a Sunday night. When I wasn't supposed to be down at Gordon Park, and but I was just like, this is like perfect, and it's been here for years. And I'm like, I'm from Warrensville. What am I doing on East 72nd, Gordon Park? But that's what we did. But everybody was down there. And now when I went down there just recently, I looked around and it was just like that aha moment. Like, I could walk to the water from here. Like, why couldn't I develop? Why wouldn't we build something here? Why wouldn't anybody do anything? So it is that funny aha moment.
Yeah. So I think I have an interesting question for you all. What do you think your competitive advantage is? Do you think that your culture, your race, provides you some sort of competitive advantage, if at all, in this work that we're doing? We've talked a little bit about some things, but I just wonder if you guys have any thoughts about that.
I mean, I'll keep it 100. No, I think that the issues that we face as minorities, I don't care if you're Black, I don't care if you're female, I don't care if you're gay, whatever it may be, is that the real question is intellectual value. We are not viewed as intellectual creatures in that way. We're not viewed as economic geniuses, not viewed as visionaries outside of social situations. So I think the hardest part in these rooms is for them to take our knowledge seriously. I think the numbers are hugely important. I think having capital and understanding the conversations about capital and really speaking their language. There is a terminology thing going on in there, a little alphabet y'all talk about, those type of things. But I think the struggle is always stereotypes when we walk into a room. The struggle to overcome those stereotypes is probably the first thing at the table at all times. After that, I think that if you're able to convey a real message, they will move past that visible blockage and into a real openness. But I believe that the real issue is that how do we get past people's own fears about our inability to do things as far as they're concerned?
I'm trying to be really careful on my answer on this, because The competitive advantage is really a facade. What has been created to help us sometimes hinders us. We create the quotas, we create the demands for diversity and inclusion, but those demands of diversity and inclusion usually comes from a majority or ownership of, because let me do something to make everybody feel good and say that I'm diverse. But what happens is nobody thinks about the outcomes or the sustainability of it. I'm only creating an opportunity for you for a certain threshold, because I don't value you really for your experience. I'm only thinking about the value you bring to me because it's a requirement on their job. I don't value you as a woman or as Black. So it perpetuates a belief that there is some equity and inclusion, but we have not finished the journey and thought about the outcomes of it. So you just can't look at the president and say, oh, I did good. I hired a Black developer. I hired a Black construction company. And then what after that? But did they grow? Sometimes what we have seen, and I've seen it in the construction industry so much, that they'll use a minority company and they have this quota, but they're not paying them their value, and they don't think, and that's a whole different story about how much more it costs for us. They're out of business. They are totally out of business. Some people have unfortunately been put in business because of those acronyms of MBE and SBE, and they don't know what the heck they're doing. It's just like, oh, they give me a job because I'm like, I have seen people apply to go for jobs just based on the acronyms or the quotas that have been put on the contract. That it's time to stop. We need to value ourselves, and we need to push for more equity and inclusion that's sustainable for our community, that makes us grow. That's our responsibility for our children, for our legacy. We can't have a legacy if we sell out. We can't let other people create our threshold if we sell out. You can't tell me that. So it's not a competitive advantage, it's a facade, and it's just something that makes some folks feel good that they created a little bit of something. It's not these days over. Thank you, sir, for giving me a little bit of piece of it. Those days are over.
Yeah.
we need to create a different narrative. So
Tokenism is real in this industry for sure. Just to have you in the room makes them feel better, even if you're not speaking. And so for sure, you can see that. But Ariane, I want to kind of come back to our conversation. And then there's a couple questions in the chat I want to get to as well. But just really quickly, I want to talk a little bit more about MBE, FBE. Just briefly, from my personal experience, when we first started. So my first project was the Madison building on East 105th Street. So that's the first building we started and completed as a team. And the contractor in our first meeting to kind of talk about quotas said to me, so, Chris, we really struggle with this. And I said, well, do you mind telling me why? And the individual said to me, well, when we hire people from the neighborhood, they typically can't read, and that causes a safety issue on the site. And so I'll never forget that. It's going to stay with me till the day I die, because it changed completely how I viewed the work that I was doing. And it immediately became important to me to think about construction in a different way, because that's exactly what happens is they tokenize people and they simply put them on the site to be visible, but they're sweeping, they're not doing any actual construction work.
Yeah.
And so can you talk to us a little bit about some of your experiences on construction sites and the value of having skilled labor?
Skilled labor is so important. It's very important, whether union or non-union, that we increase our minority and female workforce. It's a proven fact that when you have more of a diverse workforce, it really does increase profitability. But unfortunately, not everybody sees it that way. We have had where we have put our minority workforce on jobs. I'll give you a great example. I had a carpenter that had almost 20 years of carpentry experience, and it was maybe one black and whites on this particular job. And when he got to the job, they gave him a pail. And one of the guys said, "Here, boy, go over there and get," and this is in 2019. "Here, boy, go over there and go get some of these materials." Or they have been told, "You're only here because we have to put you here." Or after the hours on a particular job have been kept, because it'll say like you may have 400 hours. So on 399, many of the blacks or the women know that they're going to be off of that job because they want to use people that are who they perceive are more knowledgeable. So it's interesting because what happens is minorities and women do not get more knowledgeable on those jobs because they don't get the opportunity. Even when you get on the job site, they're not pushed up to any level of authority. They're not getting the knowledge. And so many times you may see some things and you compare them. And I'm like, you've been in this trade for years. Why don't you know this? So what I did personally, which is my passion, is I brought an organization called NAMAC, National Association of Minority Contractors here. I am involved in CAA, every other industry, except for one that I don't particularly feel that great for, that fine for. But I did that because it's an organization forced by us, where we talk freely and push the things for workforce and entrepreneurship. When you have the majority of folks pushing that for you, you're not going to it's not going to succeed. And I think that all organizations, minority organizations, need a diversity unit to their organization. It's integral. But for us to do that, the concentration is specifically on our workforce and how we can advocate and educate. So we've almost allowed it to happen by saying, "Oh, it's again, I'm on this job." But more, you're allowed to engage, go to training, and we have not had those opportunities. I thrive on that. I thrive on taking, like the young man I said that couldn't read the ruler. He was sort of embarrassed to tell anybody. Let's send him to school, and then I bring that up in that form and space. "Oh, well, this is what we're looking for." You're just not going to tell him. We just had a guy for the organization that I chose not to be a part of. He said, "Well, you have these quotas and you have this workforce things, and we have to hire these people, but they don't know anything." It took every inch of me to jump through the screen. Thank goodness it was a screen and we weren't in person. But how we need to change that. That's wrong. So my goal is to hire people. I send them to training, the CEA all the time. We have the most people that's usually enrolled in all the classes. I empower my person from the management to the laborer to the carpenter. Everybody is and everybody's a team member. We're part of the AK team of my company. And that's how we got it. We have to empower. I'm sorry, I went over on that, but I'm just so passionate.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Really quickly, I just want to jump in the chat. So Aaron asks, how do you think we can bridge the gap from new minority-owned developers to learn from seasoned developers? What can the commercial real estate industry in CLE do better?
I'll jump in. To bridge the gap. I guess, working with your CDC is key. Famicos, Burton Bell Carr, those CDCs that are in the community is something that's been helpful as a new developer. But bridging the gap, it's tough because I look at it as being a new developer. Like I said, we've only been here 2 years doing this, and we've got 3 projects, but it was just getting it done. We jumped in the fire with both feet and said, we're going to figure it out. We didn't have a mentor program or anybody showing us the way. And I think that's something, I would like to build with my team and say, hey, how can we mentor people on being a developer? But again, it's money too. You know, people got to believe in you, and people got to trust you, and you got to have a track record of experience. You know, between me and my team, we've probably flipped and rehabbed and had rentals over 200 individually. So coming together for us, having that experience is key. Having cash is key. But you got to have a project people believe in. You got to have people have to believe in you as a person. I started flipping houses on my own through the Cuyahoga Land Bank. My partner Jermaine told me, he said, "Hey, go to the land bank. I need to buy my mom a house." And she was losing her job. She was in an apartment. And I was like, "You're not moving in with me." So I was like, I went to, he said, "Go to the land bank." I took money out of my 401k, bought a house through the land bank for like 25, put 25 into it. And she's still living in his house to this day in Warrensville. And it's worth 120, which is amazing. You know, the market now is crazy, but that's how I learned. I paid myself back, went to another bank and got refied and bought another house. And you just you gotta want it yourself to build your own experience. And then at that point, when I can prove to people and go to my friends or my investors and say, "Hey, I've done 2 or 3 houses on my own. I want to use other people's money now," and they trust you. And you got to build that trust. You got to build a rapport with people. And, I don't care what color you are, money and numbers talk to people. I'm not going to invest in you just because you're Black or any other thing unless I believe in you and I know that the numbers look good. But I think bridging that gap is just helping each other, communicating, but you gotta show the effort yourself. You gotta put yourself at risk. Because right now, that's what we're doing. We're at risk. We didn't have the backing, we didn't have the mentorship, but that's something that, this group that's on the call now can help everybody with. But I don't think you go out to the city and say, "Help me do this." You got to figure it out, and you got to, meet the right people and be in front of the right people at the right time.
Something that was created with actually with GCP, the CDI effort, the Construction Diversity Inclusion effort, has been around for a few years now, about 3 or 4 years, and it's about diversity, inclusion, and construction. What we just did recently was, and we just had our first kickoff, and I can't wait to have Marquette and Richard, although Jermaine, he did join this committee, but we realized we need to know what's going on from the beginning to the end. So we created an enterprise committee with developers, architects, engineers, and construction, all 4, so that we can learn and work together, so we can know each other. So we have those relationships, so we can know how do we engage with the CDCs? How do we get conversations? So we just had the first meeting 2 weeks ago. It was a brainstorm that I sort of came up with and just said, "Hey, let's do it," and everybody bought in. So that's something that we do to bridge the gap to help and work together. So
That's awesome. Marquette?
Yeah, I think that I probably look at things way differently because I'm learning, right? So I do everything kind of from reverse, right? What is the ROI and what is the investment? So I think if there's anything I see is that you have a ton of opportunity zones, right? All over the city. I think Warrensville is 85%. It's a lot of tax shelters. What we need to create, number one, is a way for us to better understand that financial instrument, right? When I was here a year and a half ago, there was a opportunity zone convention downtown, and nobody was going. When we went down there, man, there were very few Black people there. There were very few non-financial. And I think that that's the first thing, is to get access to discussions on capital and understand a better way to go after that capital, large amounts of capital, right? Because there's a level of, if the money's too small, nobody can really make any money, right? And that's the first thing that strikes us down, right? Second off, I think that going with the opportunity zone funding part is access to opportunity zone funds. And outside of Cleveland, on a national level, We can bring ideas that basically have to do with social impact because majority of the city is under these opportunity zones. So we should be looking at, we understand what people in Cleveland need, what people in Ohio need, and outside funders want that knowledge, right? So to me, we have to bridge the gap to these opportunity zone funding mechanisms to release those funds in our city.
And just to piggyback off that, that's what got us into this is the opportunity zones 2 years ago when we thought it. Our 72nd project is all opportunity zone. Our other project is all opportunity zone, but getting that knowledge out to our people so they know what the opportunity zone means is a tax shelter, for capital gains money for the rich, and they're putting their money in Ohio City's a opportunity zone, Tremont's opportunity zone. I'm like, really? So
Yep.
But if you find, if we get that knowledge out to people to say, hey, this is a tax shelter where, they dump their, millions of dollars in our OZ and they get it back in 5 to 10 years with no tax, penalties, and with interest, and I think that knowledge in our community is key, is like knowing what's going on in government, knowing what's going on with these opportunity zones. That's really what pushed us to this also. But yeah, that's huge to get that knowledge out to folks.
And I'll even say it on a smaller level. I was talking to some young cats, street cats, and I asked them if they knew what a REIT was. And they said, nah, man, what's a REIT? And I said, well, you and your homies go in on a pack, right, and hit the block. They was like, oh, yeah, we know about that.
Yeah, you know what that is.
That's the REIT. And it was like, oh, we could do that with houses? I was like, yeah, man, it's the same thing. You can do it with any business idea, right? It's really translating what they already doing into something that's positive, something that's beneficial for them, something they can pay taxes on, right? So I go back to, like Richard said, it's financial language knowledge. We need a better understanding of the financial language so that we can go in these rooms and present exactly what that funder wants to hear.
Right. And the other thing is building a team. I mean, with that, knowing the numbers, knowing your ROIs, but I didn't, the pro forma, like if anything I can tell people, like get somebody that can do a pro forma. The banks want it. Everybody wants a pro forma. When we started this 2 years ago, we were like, man, how do you get a pro forma? How can we find somebody to make us one? And then we were just like, we got to figure this out ourselves. Like everybody, that's the pro forma and showing, that is key. And I would say to anybody that, building a team and finding somebody that can do a pro forma. And we've been blessed enough to work with some big time developers that helped us with our pro forma and kind of, understanding that whole process. But that is big. Everybody wants your pro forma. So, if you guys know anybody else, or let us know too. But we learned the hard way over the last 2 years of creating our own pro forma, working with other people's pro forma, hiring somebody to do a pro forma. But that was something new to me. And it's just I wasn't from there, culturally, things like that. I was like, all right, I know what the numbers are. I know what the square footage is. I know what the build is. All right, the numbers make sense. Give me some money. But when you get on this bigger scale, they want to see your 10-year, 10-year cash on cash. They want to see, how it looks over 10 years. And, it's a big deal.
The secret to that statement though, and I 100% agree with you as someone who does pro formas for a living. You know how many people can actually do a pro forma? Like 5.
I know.
So the majority of developers can't do a pro forma. And like, that's the secret they don't tell you. They have a financial analyst in their office that all they do all day is look at numbers, and they do the pro forma. All the developer really does is go in front of the meeting and talk someone else's numbers. And like, but you will literally sit in a room. You know how many closings I've sat in? Nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're talking about, but they're all looking at me like, well, why don't you know this? Like, what? Are you, you don't know. You asking me because you don't know. And so
we gotta know.
Just that feeling of the creations of inadequacy around particular things. And I feel like for us, for women, for people of color, there's this real focus on these real technical things that when they're in the room with others, those things are important, but it's not nearly as important as it's with us, because to Ariana's point from earlier, they want us to prove our technical skills for us to even have a seat at the table. And so that's just been my little joke to myself. It's like I really get frustrated having to build a pro forma because it's hard, as it should be. But then when I realize that like I'm one of very few, particularly Black females, who can do this, it's like, oh, okay. So now it's become like a superpower, right? In
It
terms
is.
of being able to sit in a room and have a conversation and not be able for folks to just immediately assume and not know. And so a lot of times just kind of sit there and believe it or not, be quiet and just let them talk. Like, okay,
Chris,
you tell me.
you can start a consulting firm if you know how to do performers. You need to. I'm paying other people to do them. Be paying you more. I'd rather pay you than somebody else. But we've been struggling for about 2 years, but I think we got it. But that will be a class I would attend for sure, and I'm still learning about them.
And actually, this goes to the question that's next. In terms of, has anyone talked to the city or a nonprofit group about providing grants for minority developers? So I'll just answer this question, and the answer is yes. This is, I don't want to say it this way, but I think it's true. It's the flavor of the month at the moment in terms of equity in the city of Cleveland has been a topic of conversation for about 3 years now. And now that conversation has continued to grow, now it's become particular to industry. And it's something that I have been talking about to any nonprofit leader, any city leader who will listen, particularly as whether we're talking about opportunity zones or the Mayor's Neighborhood Transformation Initiative or any of these other projects where the intention is to build wealth for minority communities. It's always interesting to me that we want to build wealth while not building the wealth with individuals who look like the communities that are there. And so it just has been a very big focus of the nonprofit community. So whether you're talking about Cleveland Neighborhood Progress and their Contractors on the Rise program, or you're talking about Cleveland Development Advisors, which is now working on a project and has someone on their staff that is set there specifically to work with the creation of Black developers. So it is a very important topic in the industry right now in community development, and particularly as the $541 million rolls into the city of Cleveland. The conversation about how you distribute that money equitably has also been a big topic of conversation as well. And so as we try to figure out how to spend that money, it has become a really big topic in terms of how do we provide space for developers. The last thing I'll say as it applies to this topic, and please other folks jump in, is the grants are never big enough. So if you want to give me $2,500, $5,000, $10,000 to do something, that's awesome. But the architect alone is probably going to cost, I don't know, $200,000. So if you're giving me 25 grand, that's not quite gonna get me there.
And
though
Chris,
I appreciate your money.
And that money that's just money that it probably help with dinners and people that you're meeting. That's just going back in the kitty. Like, thanks for that. But I would agree. I mean, the grants are there, the money, the city will give it to you. But I think the key is, you got to have some skin in the game. You just can't go and say, hey, I need a grant to do this. They want to see that you have some skin in the game, that you've done some work, that you're fully committed to. We didn't go to the city asking for grant money until we, bought land, knew we could build on it, did all our tests. We spent a lot of money to say, because I didn't realize, like, hey, we bought some land, let's go build. Now it's like, oh, did they demo the house and dump it in the basement? Was it a gas station? Did somebody dump some old gas? I was like, what? I was like, people do that? So it's just like, you got to have skin in the game, and, there's money there in the city and these other, CDA, GCP, but you got to have a story, and you got to put some effort in, and you got to spend some money in order for somebody to believe in you and get the money back. But yeah, it is a little bit, but every little bit helps, trust me.
Well, I think that what Richard's talking about too is that they use the financial barriers to keep us out, right? And so, yeah, they give you a little bit of money, but really look, site design, site plans, phase ones, you could drop $1 million so easy.
So
right?
easy.
I mean, you're going into a situation like, I came in reverse. So I came in going numbers first. I went pro forma first. So that roller coaster in itself will make most minorities leave the game.
Mhm.
Then you're going into trying to get site control, which is a whole nother monster of things, because land remediation, Richard's talking about these basements. What he's really talking about is $50,000 per acre of just bringing in dirt, just dirt, not building,
Right.
not nothing, just dirt. The dirt is $50,000. So this game that people like AKA have been involved in for so long, it really is literally a buy-in. The reason why they don't have to know about performance is because they have money. Because they can pay someone to do the pro forma. They can pay for everything. And what's interesting about Cleveland is that it has institutional things already in place. So you got the same 5 to 10 people doing all the land development, the same 5 to 10 construction companies owning the market. And what it creates is a system where nobody really has to have knowledge. All they have to have is access. So if they have access, they can move and make things happen. But we have to have knowledge to gain access. So that barrier is a very interesting tunnel to go into, because ultimately, the more money you have, the more you can mess up, the more mistakes, the more you can deal with entitlement taking 18 months versus 9 months. That 18 months, your whole deal could fall apart. Your money could go away. So there's so many levers to make your project fail that if you don't have equity partners, if you don't have a clear financial plan, it doesn't matter how good or how great your idea is. It doesn't matter how much good you want to do in the community, right? Land development is a very interesting process, because ultimately it's how much bread do you have and how fast can you burn it.
Yep.
And if you burn it all, the train will come to a stop. If you can keep on adding some coal and get you a couple folks to give you some coal, the train will keep running. You know what I mean? And you constantly looking for passengers. Like, you're reaching out like, hey, get on my train. Hey, get on my train. Oh, you don't got no money? Get off the train. Because there's a lot of intellectual people on the train. There's not a lot of financial people on the train.
Yeah.
And so it's creating that train that financial people see moving, but they want to jump on it at the same time, but they don't kick you off because they got big money, so they might kick you off your own train. And so that's the difficulty, I feel, is the balancing act, the sharing with outside people, right? Because once you talk about your deal, that's when your deal gets attacked, right? Partnering with different people, because everybody here knows everybody. And so you could find yourself in a mistake that happened 20 years ago. People mad at each other for 20 years. You stuck in that mud with them. It's political, right? It's social. It's who you hang out with, who you have drinks with. It's not just, I got money and a good idea. So I think that all those things also create barriers. And the hard part is creating a collective. What I feel is needed the most is a collective where everybody kind of sits down and really, for me to make a film, I have to talk to lots of different people to make that movie. It's not just, hey, Marquette, go get a camera, go make it. So I see land development the same way, that if we had more of a collective about sharing business and working together, and you ain't gonna always make a bunch of bread, but you will control your destiny more because we're just not very inclusive with each other. You know what I mean? So I think inclusion in terms of collective is how we control more of our destiny as land developers.
So, Marquette, that speaks to my heart in a different sort of way, because one of the things that has been very precarious being in my seat is the expectations that come along with friends in terms of their expectations for what you're going to do for them while you're sitting in your seat, and how you're going to wield your perceived or real power for them as it applies to projects. But I'm not a finance person, but I have to use financial sensibility. And so I'm not telling you no because you don't have a good idea. I'm telling you no because you haven't made the numbers work.
Right.
And me saying that to you isn't a bad thing, because I'm saying this to you. We having a conversation right now. We ain't in front of anybody else. It's us.
Actually a good thing.
And I'm saying, get it right. There's nothing wrong with that. And that is the 100% credit that I give to WRJ, is that they got the feedback and they didn't go, oh, this is racist. Oh, this is this and that. And even though it might have been, it was just like, all right, I get it. Let's pick ourselves up, let's dust ourselves off and keep moving. We have to refine this project and make it better. And so many of us get stuck, to your point, Marquette, at that point that we can't move past it. And then for those of us who challenge, we now have a stigma because, oh, you're not trying to move us forward. Like, yes, I am.
Right.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but iron sharpens iron, though. You know what I mean? Like, I had a conversation with somebody. Kanye West was talking about putting Black people on Fortune 500 company boards. And one of my dudes, the finance guy, he said to me, he goes, well, do you think it's right that they just put Black people on these boards? And I said, listen, man, if you run a Fortune 500 company and you're the chief of board of directors and you get a resume from a Black person, that's the very best Black person you ever have. They're better than anybody on that damn board. If you walk in a room and it's filled with 20 people and there are 3 gray-haired female doctors, trust me, she know her game. So I think we have to also understand that when we move into these moments, you are probably getting the very best people for the job at that moment. And that's the key to iron sharpening iron.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there, Chris. I would thank Chris. I mean, WRJ came in with a project. We went to the, couple city, Director Collier and other people, and they looked at us like, this ain't gonna cut it, man. Like, we thinking, when I saw Chris, I was like, oh, she at the CDC, she Black. I was like, oh, we in, like, they gonna get us. And it was like, nah, you got to go back and fix this, because you got to represent the right way. You got to make sure y'all, it's not too many of us doing this. And I realized it coming in, but we needed that criticism. It wasn't, we weren't looking for anybody to hand anything, but we were like, oh, we got to end now. But we knew, like, hey, we're setting the path. We're trailblazers. We're doing this grassroots, and Chris and their support has been great. We never looked at anybody saying, give us anything because we're Black. And Chris is, but we did go to Chris and said after that, we like, hey, we got our stuff together, like you said, and we want to partner with Famicos. And she was like, yep, you guys are doing the right thing. You guys got the right team in place. And that's what it takes. You say iron sharpening iron, nobody gave us anything. And, Chris, she sits in a position where, she can make some decisions, but you can't just say, I'm gonna give it to anybody, or, just because you're Black. But you gotta come correct. You gotta have the right people in place. You gotta have a right team, because this is our, we're building a legacy for everybody that comes behind us. Our kids, our families, our, the community, the people that are looking at us. So we gotta set a high bar, and Chris does. So I thank you, Chris, for all your support.
Thanks for saying that. I think they're gonna want us to wrap up, but I want to ask one more question before we close out. And that's just generally, what do you guys think is next for Cleveland? What's the vision? What's next?
Mr. Let you go.
As far as equity, inclusion, building.
No. I don't. just for, I mean, I could be specific and say the east side, but just what do you think is next for the east side of Cleveland?
I think it's very important on the east side of Cleveland that we create Tremonts in Ohio cities and we don't forget about the east side. I know there's this divide, east side, west side, but and we're being more inclusive, but there still is that divide because we're not seeing those opportunities. I'm so glad that you're doing this on 72nd. I wish it wasn't snowing that day when you guys had your
Right.
because I really wanted to come. I wanted to say, can you do it again? Can you do it again? But we need to create more opportunities on the east side for developers. And I'm so glad to see these two brothers doing it. Because there's definitely an opportunity I want to talk to you about for a project that I want to do on 55th and St. Clair. So I sure would like to get one of those containers. So
We can take care of that.
yeah.
I think for the future I think Cleveland overall is booming right now. I think people are moving here for some reason. I don't know if it's the cost of living, but
Yep.
people are here in Cleveland, and I'm amazed. I mean, rents are going up. You know, I'm seeing it. I mean, my buddy's a realtor. I mean, the market is great. Cost of living is good. Downtown's booming. So I think in the next couple of years, I mean, the east side of Cleveland's going to be, you know, even better than the west side. You know, I hate to put that divide there, but you know, it's not black and white. I mean, we want to make sure everybody from, you know, black, white, Asian, Mexican, we want to make sure the people that are that workforce community and the affluent community. I mean, because our project on 72nd is walking distance to the water. You know, we're right down the street from Bracknell. You know, so it's that whole east side waterfront and the inner circle of suburbs too on the outskirts of Cleveland are on the rise. So, I mean, I want to make this as diverse as possible on the east side and not, you know, push anybody out, push anybody, you know, away. We want to make it, you know, a mix of good people in a good community, man. But I think Cleveland's on the rise right now, for sure.
I think it's exactly what Dawn said. I think population growth, you're going to see lots of people coming here because of its destination, fresh water, and location. I also think you're going to see an emergence in the art scene, more films being made, things like that. So I think it's pretty bright, you know, and I think compete with Atlanta in the next 5 to 10 years. That's why I'm here.
That's the first time I've ever heard anybody say that, Marquette. So from your lips to God's ears.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Ariane, Richard, and Marquette for a fantastic discussion this morning. I really appreciate the time. I love this. I've had a pretty hard week. And so this has actually been a major highlight. So thank you very much to NAIOP for inviting and having all of us. And Amber, turn it over to you.
Yes. Thank you so much for the discussion and being so open and honest with your answers. Again, this is just something that we just need to continue to talk about and bring awareness to. So again, thank you so much for the discussion this morning. Just a couple things. We do have some upcoming events coming up for NAIOP. There is an Ethics for Commercial Real Estate Professional on May 20th. There is an in-person tour and mixer at Tinnerman Lofts on June 24th. And our charities golf outing will be held at Quail Hollow on July 19th. You can register for these events and check out other upcoming events on our website, www.naipnorthernohio.com. Again, thank you all for attending today's discussion, and we look forward to having this discussion again in a different sense, but hopefully in person next time. So again, thank you all for your time this morning. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.